Step by step, Bosnia is unraveling on account of a reckless political experiment. Bosnian Serb lawmakers plan to quit state institutions and form their own judicial, taxation and military authorities for the autonomous Republika Srpska. Officials in Sarajevo say that it's a move towards secession and that Bosnian Serb officials are deliberately trying to force the country to fail so that they can make their legal case for secession down the line. Russia and Serbia have expressed support for the Bosnian Serbs, while the Americans and the Europeans have remained indifferent to the situation. Meanwhile, as a last-ditch effort, Bosniak organizations are now calling on Turkey to break its silence and speak out on behalf of Bosniaks. If nothing is done to hold back the secessionist drive, to hold back the splitting of the Bosnian military, another round of hostilities is possible. So why is this happening and how did we arrive at this point? Because armies don't start wars, politicians do. I'm your host Shirvan and welcome to Caspian Report. Mountainous and nearly landlocked, Bosnia and Herzegovina is home to several ethno-religious groups, with the three largest being Bosniaks, Serbs and Croats. Throughout history, Bosniaks, being Muslim by faith, have had a particularly difficult time finding a place for themselves between Catholic Croatia and Orthodox Serbia. This quest for statehood turned into a fight for survival in 1992 when the multi-ethnic Bosnia and Herzegovina declared independence. In the early phase of the conflict, Bosniaks and Bosnian Croats fought side by side against the Bosnian Serbs and the Serb-dominated Yugoslav army. But as fighting progressed, Bosniak and Croat relations plummeted and turned into a war within a war. Atrocities were committed by all sides, but Bosniaks bore the brunt of the violence. By 1993, policymakers in Belgrade and Zagreb had come to see eye to eye and supported respective Bosnian Croat and Bosnian Serb paramilitary forces in their attempts to ethnically cleanse Bosniaks from the parts of Bosnia which they wanted to merge with Croatia and Serbia respectively. More than 100,000 people were killed and nearly 2 million were displaced in what was the worst outbreak of violence in Europe after World War II. Eventually, thanks to American diplomacy and NATO airstrikes, the reluctant alliance between Bosniaks and Croats was restored, and the Serb army was stopped in its tracks. A peace deal known as the Dayton Accords was signed in 1995. However, in doing so, a complex political system was established. For one, the agreement split Bosnia into two autonomous entities: the Republika Srpska, which was predominantly Serb, and the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which was dominated by Bosniaks. Meanwhile, at the federal level, the Bosniak, Serb and Croat communities were to share power through a rotating presidency. Maintaining this house of cards has been Sarajevo's primary objective. It's a task that hasn't been easy. In fact, in the aftermath of the conflict, Bosnia was in such bad shape that it was impossible to set up a functional government. Lawmakers in Sarajevo had little authority over the countryside. So, the Dayton Peace Deal created a legal basis for international envoys, mainly from Europe, to effectively govern Bosnia and Herzegovina. The supernatural body, called the Office of High Representative, was given the legal right to impose rulings and create institutions to bypass the socio-political items the three rival ethnic groups could not agree on. And so the envoys of the Office of High Representative essentially became the overseers of the 1995 peace deal. And for the past 26 years, they've focused on infrastructure reconstruction and the establishment of joint institutions such as military, judiciary and taxation. About 130 laws have been passed over the decades, all of which have made Bosnia a more functional state. What's more, by stabilizing Bosnia, a sense of normality was brought to the Balkan region. But good things are usually short-lived. In 2006, circumstances changed when the Americans pulled out of Bosnia's daily politics. The Europeans were caught off guard and failed to secure the power vacuum. As a result, local nationalism and populism steadily revived. History was making a comeback. Only the local players observed these refinements at the time, while much of the globe remained indifferent. Milorad Dodik, the Serb member of the tripartite presidency, was the first to comprehend the American exit. He started rejecting the office of the High Representative and all of the institution building achieved since 1995. Dodik has been pursuing that nationalist agenda since 2006. But now he's taking things a step further. In October 2021, Dodik stated that Republika Srpska would pull out of Bosnia's armed forces, top judiciary body, and tax administration, which are the three institutions making up the key pillars of Bosnian statehood, security, fiscal system, and the rule of law. Bosnia is now facing its biggest existential threat since the guns fell silent. If Dodik withdraws Serb troops from the Bosnian army and creates a separate Serb army, the national armed forces would be split in two, and the prospects of further division and conflict would become very real. When everyone is talking past each other, when language fails, conflict happens. Dodik is gambling on the fact that the world is deeply distracted. By swiftly creating new facts on the ground, he assumes that global confusion would result in no meaningful international response. And the thing is, he might be right. At best, international peacekeepers would increase in size and scope to stop the two armies from sliding into a new armed conflict. But Dodik would still have accomplished what he wants, a barrier within Bosnia. And this isn't just political rhetoric. By creating a separate Serb army, Dodik wants to undermine the federal government in Sarajevo and force the failure of Bosnia so that he can make his case for legal secession down the line. It's this rhetoric that has revived fears of new conflict. Now, clearly Dodik isn't taking this gamble on his own. He has strong backing from Russia and Serbia, and though he has dismissed the possibility of armed conflict, last month he threatened to force the Bosnian army to withdraw from Republika Srpska once the Bosnian Serb army is formed. And if NATO tried to intervene, Dodik would call in his friends for help, which is a not so subtle reference to Russia and Serbia. Still more troubling, soon after his announcement in October, Bosnian Serb law enforcement held a drill with special forces, armed vehicles and helicopters just outside the capital Sarajevo on Mount Jahorino, which is symbolic because during the Bosnian War, the Serb army shelled the city from that advantage point, killing thousands of civilians. It's the kind of military posturing that was previously unthinkable. Even if Dodik's policy is merely a political stunt to rally his voters, such posturing ultimately undermines Sarajevo's ability to carry out its civic responsibilities. But though it's easy to dismiss Dodik as a radical separatist, the reality is more complicated. Technically speaking, he makes a valid point by saying that the office of High Representative is unconstitutional. Its mission was never meant to be permanent. Republika Srpska is supposed to be an autonomy with a fully functioning regional parliament, but its authority has often been overruled by the office of High Representative. Yet at the same time, the peace envoys are part of the Dayton Peace Deal, which also includes the constitution. So while Dodik is technically not a separatist, he is looking to overthrow the status quo. Observing the crisis from the sidelines is the main Bosnian Croat party, which has an unflinching alliance with Dodik's party. Bosnian Croat lawmakers see the coalition with their Bosnian Serb counterparts as a means to create a third autonomous entity within Bosnia, one that is governed by Bosnian Croats. This is the last thing Bosnia and Herzegovina needs, more autonomous entities. And all this reminds Sarajevo of the 1990s, when Serb and Croat leaders conspired to ethnically cleanse and divide Bosnia. Either way, Bosniak-based parties are now the sole defense against the dismantling of state institutions. However, the Bosniak countermeasures, disdaining nationalist ideas with nationalist ideas, has only widened the enmity. By responding in kind, Bosniaks have inadvertently set in motion a vicious cycle that is destroying the country they want to protect. Bosniak lawmakers have everything to lose by embarking on such zero-sum confrontational politics. And while in the past Bosniaks could count on Washington and Brussels to come to their rescue, that commitment is no longer so. Western diplomats are preoccupied with their own problems. Think of COVID lockdowns, economic growth, energy storage this winter, not to mention geopolitical rivalries elsewhere. Adding to the complexity is the normalization agreement that Serbia and Kosovo signed in September 2020, which nudged Serbian foreign policy in favor of the West. Back at home, in Belgrade, the policy change was met with confusion because it runs against the principle of balancing between Russia and America, a game that Serbia has traditionally played. The move has opened the Serbian leadership up for criticism from the pro-Russian lobbies in Belgrade, even within the ruling party. Dodik recognizes that opening and seeks to gain the favor of nationalist forces in Moscow and Belgrade. Meanwhile, in Sarajevo, as a last-ditch effort, Bosniak organizations are now calling on Turkey to break its silence and speak out on behalf of Bosniaks in Bosnia and Herzegovina. If the Europeans remain indifferent, Turkey might just step up to counter Russian influence. The whole situation is a tinderbox waiting to go off. Bosnia's political landscape is now thoroughly divided into three ethno-political blocs whose intense rivalries have incapacitated the decision-making system. Most state institutions are now rendered dysfunctional. It's a turning point for Bosnia, because as a society lives under the roof of a state, that roof is only as strong as its institutional pillars. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. If you like what we do and you want to show some support, please consider joining our Patreon platform or the YouTube membership program. The links for it will be in the description. Doing so helps to keep our platform independent and self-sustaining. In any case, thank you for watching and Sağ ol.